Chapter 6. Impossible. August's malaise lasted his entire walk back to town. Monsieur Picard was waiting for him in the middle of the road as he approached town, pacing back and forth so quickly he'd made a dent in the dirt. He stopped when he saw August and crooked a finger at him. August followed. "It's happened to me," said the baker once they were safely ensconced in his rooms over the bakery. "You forgot someone?" "You forgot someone." August tampered down his shock and shook his head. "You weren't mentioned in Blanche's letter, and you haven't said anything. Why would I want to tell anyone? He's mine." He paused. "Was mine." No wonder he had been trying to get August to share information about the memory loss. Mr. Pickard was so private, so singular, that August was surprised all over again and didn't know what to say. "I don't know. I wouldn't have noticed I'd forgot him if I hadn't." He blinked and shook his head. "I've always kept journals, you see, and one of them caught my eye when I was putting the latest up. I keep everything, and I found these letters and sketches in my chest. A lock of hair, dried wheat stalks, a little bell for a cat's collar. They were old, but they weren't rotting or dusty, and so I went looking back through my diaries. You don't know how odd till you find keepsakes you clearly treasured and can't figure out why you loved them." He shook his head again. "I learned his name was Emmanuel, and he died nearly 30 years ago when we were still young. We never married, but we were together from 15 till I put him in the cemetery," said Monsieur Pickard, sniffling. The older man wiped his face and took a shuddering breath. "Thing is, I don't know when I forgot him, so I'm as likely to confuse you as I am to help you." "It's all right," August said, and handed the man his handkerchief. He couldn't help being struck by the fact that love was at the center of Monsieur Pickard's story as well. After the crying had lessened and Monsieur Pickard seemed ready to continue, August asked, "So no one in Fresnes would know Emmanuel?" "Some might if pressed, but not really. I'm older than most of the folks in Fresnes. Lord Muro sent his regards when Emmanuel passed. He's done that for every widow and widower since his wife died." Monsieur Pickard sniffed again. "I feel like I've lost someone again, even though he's been dead for years." "May I ask something personal?" August asked, mouth suddenly dry. This was almost exactly the fake scenario he had considered asking his father about 1,000 times. Monsieur Pickard snorted. "You may ask. Is it better not remembering how much it hurt to lose him the first time?" Monsieur Pickard scoffed, head tilting to the side. "Different kinds of love breed different kinds of grief, none of them good or easier to handle than other." That wasn't what people had said to August at his mother's funeral. They had uttered condolences with the same mouths that whispered, "Pity he's old enough to remember this." August had no desire to forget his mother, but sometimes he did want to forget losing her. While things hadn't gotten better since her death, they had changed. Not better. Different. He still woke on her birthday and wandered to her quarters with a bouquet of roses, the same deep red of her hair and pink of her blush. When in court or listening to the Grand Duke drone on, he still leaned over as if to whisper a joke into the ear before realizing there was no one beside him. And on the worst days, he dreamt of her and woke up thinking she was still there. The grief stopped him in his tracks and took hold of his heart. It wrung a little more joy from his life each time. "There's no shame in grief or sadness," Monsieur Pickard continued, "and there's none at all in wanting to forget. For some, I'm sure this would be better. It's not for me. It's a purgatory. I cannot trust myself to know what I really feel about Emmanuel, and I can never find out because he's the only person I could ask. I think those memories of him were a comfort. I want them back." August nodded. "I'm sorry." "Don't apologize. Fix it," said Monsieur Pickard. "I'll do my best," said August. "I have a few more questions if you don't mind. Write down your normal routine, any and every detail you can think of. Did you do anything different on the last few years? meet anyone new, or receive any items you didn't have before you forgot. Monsieur Pickard grabbed a dip pen, ink, and a scrap of paper. Sit, boy. This might take a while. He wrote down far more than August expected. His notes on his routines were detailed, including monthly visits to the memorial that he had stopped taking several years ago, suggesting that he had lost his memory after Henry and was either the second or third to do so. And he listed everything he had purchased in the past few years that was out of the ordinary. When August was done speaking with Monsieur Picard, he made his way to the inn to meet Martin. His friend was at a corner table talking animatedly to Oliver Monet, and August lingered a few steps away so as not to interrupt. If romantic love was involved in the memory loss, then this was a bad time to nurture such affections. But he didn't want to crush Martin's heart. The older boys spent so much time taking care of work, August and his siblings, that he rarely focused on himself. Most people think birds sing when they're happy, but their communication is a bit more complicated than that. Martin unexplained to a rapt Oliver. It can often be territorial in nature. Unfortunate, said Oliver. When I hear a bird singing, I usually stop and listen instead of leave. This was good. August couldn't stand bird facts anymore after so many years of them. Do you sing? August asked. Martin spun around, and even Oliver looked Sharon. August, said Martin, in the most suspicious tone August had ever heard. Oliver offered to show me around Fresnay, and since I needed to retrace people's steps, it took a while, and I didn't want to discuss the job details since so much of memory loss is personal, so we started talking about birds. How are you? August took a seat across from Martin. I couldn't find anything of importance by checking out the town. We ran into Madame Barton at the bakery, but she wasn't ready to speak. On my way back from Ella's, Monsieur Pickard pulled me aside. The baker? Martin asked. Why? August hesitated, uncertain how much he wanted to reveal to Oliver. He was already involved since his mother had forgotten someone. Please keep this between us. Don't even tell your mother, August said. Of course, said Oliver, dark eyes widening. He leaned in and whispered, I won't say a word. Monsieur Pickard has also forgotten someone, and it falls in line with our working theory. August glanced at Martin and nodded. He keeps journals, and I would place his forgetting after Henry, but before Monsieur Alud. Well, that opens the door for others who haven't come forward, Martin said with a sigh. He scribbled something down and slid a sheet of paper over to August. He had taken all their notes and boiled them together to a single chart of facts. There were dates, locations, ages, birthdays, and occupations listed, and he had even included what each person had been wearing and doing when their memory loss was noticed. Madame Monet had been tutoring a local student. Blaise would usually have been baking, but had taken a break. Madame Renaud, who still refused to talk about her experience, had been seen by a few dozen folks picking up her latest gift from Monsieur Seagull from Natalie. Monsieur Alud had been putting the forget-me-nots on Lady Tremaine's shoes. Madame Monet's necklace, Blaise's and Madame Barton's rings, Monsieur Alud's forget-me-nots, and Henry's cane. Monsieur Pickard had also noted some odds and ends from Natalie's shop. Is Natalie the only merchant in town? August asked. Oliver nodded. Unless one comes through, but she fixes things and trades with folks too. She nearly lost everything opening the store a few years back, but it's taken off now. Even if it wasn't anything, it was worth looking into. Also, this came for you. Martin pulled a thin letter from his pocket. A courier dropped it off before you arrived. Let's see then. August cracked down the blue wax seal. The paper was iridescent and nearly translucent, as if a thin sheet had been cut from a large pearl. Silvery blue ink glittered in the light. I regret to inform you, Your Majesty, that the information I can provide will be of little help. Due to the personal nature of wishes and magic, we reveal information about them only when the person who made the original wish requests it. I can say, however, that while the occurrences you are describing are magical in nature, no fairy has granted a wish in Fresnay. Please remember that neither magic nor wishes are simple matters. They leave marks." "What does that mean?" asked Martin. Oliver pointed to the paper. "Wait, Your Majesty?" "The king wrote a letter to her and sent a response to us," August said, and shook his head. "So not a wish, but for a letter telling us that she can't say much. She said a few things." He flipped the letter over, hoping against hope that there was more information, and groaned. "See you in 3 days" was scrawled on the back in his father's hand, and 3 circled and underlined. "Comforting," Martin mumbled as he checked his pocket watch, flipping the cover open and shut repeatedly. "What kind of marks does she mean?" Oliver inspected the letter, eyes narrowed in curiosity. "My mother doesn't have any new marks, and I think we would have noticed." "No, not like that. What was that thing we learned?" "That was ages ago." August tapped his fingers against the table and closed his eyes, thinking back to their school years. It had been so long ago, and as interesting as he had found the lessons on magic, they had been few and far between.